Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Rechak, Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of 2 Chronicles, the 9th chapter. And as we've seen, right, the construction, the building of the temple and Solomon's palace, and the completion of it, as well as Solomon's prayer for Israel, and the sacrifices that were made to the Lord. So in 2 Chronicles 9, we see here the proving, right, of Solomon's wisdom here by the inquiry of the Queen of Sheba. Okay, and we read how she comes up here to basically test it out to see, I've heard a lot of stuff about your wisdom. Let's see if you're truly as wise as they say. So this is 2 Chronicles Chapter 9, verse 1. And when the Queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon, she came to prove Solomon with hard questions at Jerusalem, with a very great company, and camels that bear spices. And that company meaning those that she came with, right? So the resources as well as the people. And the hard questions, you can imagine those being like difficult sayings, just things that, when you have those thoughts, and even some that are generally agreed upon where nobody really has a sufficiently reasonable answer for. She came with those. And all this gold, right, and precious stones. And when she was come to Solomon, she communed with him of all that was in her heart. That means everything that was on her mind. And Solomon told her all her questions, and there was nothing hid from Solomon, which he told her not. So everything she asked, he gave an answer for. Everything she inquired about, he provided a sufficient answer for it. And when the Queen of Sheba had seen the wisdom of Solomon, and the house that he had built, and the meat of his table, and the sitting of his servants, and the attendance of his ministers, and their apparel. So she's looking at all this. She's looking at this, how the wisdom he has, the way the buildings are looking, the design. Because he had many rich kings, right? And they had gold, they had silver, they had precious stones, they had all those things. But it's also more than just a house made of gold, right? But it's about the design, the intricacy of it, the thoughtfulness of the patterns, all of these things. So she's seeing that and she's in awe. She's seeing the food on his table, right? The rations. She's seeing how his servants are carrying themselves. His servants are probably looking more glorious than kings of other nations. It says in their apparel, right, how they were dressed. His cupbearers also, and their apparel, and his ascent, by which he went up into the house of the Lord Yahweh. There was no more spirit in her. So she was just tapped out basically at this point, in just awe. And she said to the king, "It was true, it was a true report, which I heard in mine own land of thine acts and of thy wisdom. Howbeit I believed not the words until I came, and mine eyes had seen it. And behold, the one half of the greatness of thy wisdom was not told me." So basically, like, the things that I heard wasn't even the half of it, right? For thou exceedest the fame that I heard. Happy are thy men, and happy are these thy servants, which stand continually before thee and hear thy wisdom. Right? How blessed and joyous your servants must be to be able to have that audience, right, in your presence and hear all the wisdom. Blessed be the Lord Yahweh thy God, which delighted in thee to set thee on his throne, to be king. His throne doesn't mean he set King Solomon upon his own throne. What it means is he established King Solomon upon the throne of Israel. It was his throne to give, in other words. To be king for the Lord Yahweh thy God, because thy God hath loved Israel, to establish them forever. Therefore made he thee king over them, to do judgment and justice. And she gave the king 120 talents of gold, and of spices great abundance, and precious stones. Neither was there any such spice as the queen of Sheba gave King Solomon. So there was some super rarities in there. Because remember, that region, right, Sheba, they pull that up here. They had a lot. Like it was a pretty, different parts of the lands in the east have great resources, right? Some are more notable in it than others. But looking here at Sheba, right, Shaba'ah or Shabah, it says here a nation in southern Arabia, as they have it here. Sheba, the name of 3 early progenitors of tribes and of an Ethiopian district, Sheba or Sabians. So, yeah, when you go to those regions, they have good resources as well. So she was able to bring those exotic spices. Verse 10. And the servants of Hiram and the servants of Solomon, which brought gold from Ophir, brought algum trees and precious stones. And the king made of the algum trees terraces to the house of the Lord Yahweh, and to the king's palace, and harps and psalteries for singers, and there were none such seen before in the land of Judah. And King Solomon gave to the queen of Sheba all her desire, whatsoever she asked, beside that which she had brought unto the king. So meaning whatever it is that she asked for, right? Whether it was wisdom or you can imagine some sort of resources or whatever the case is, with the exception of what she had already brought to him, right? Now, there are some, I forgot what book it was that I was reading, but there are some sources, maybe it was from Babylon and Timbuktu or some other book, where they tried to spin this tale of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba having some sort of relationship to where he impregnated her and he has descendants over there, and wherever she went back to, that's not scriptural, right? That's false. King Solomon already had, all these tons and tons of women, and the scriptures would have had a record of that had that been the case. It says here, so she turned and went away to her own land, she and her servants. Now the weight of gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold. That's a lot of gold. Let's see if we can find a different wording of that. NLT says each year Solomon received about 25 tons of gold. All right, because those talents, they're not like 1 ounce. A talent is a lot. Beside that which chapmen and merchants brought, and they're in the same sense, right? Traders and merchants. So, not including what the traders and merchants brought, this is about 666 talents of gold. And all the kings of Arabia and the governors of the country brought gold and silver to Solomon. And King Solomon made 200 targets of beaten gold, a target being a shield. 600 shekels of beaten gold went to 1 target. And 300 shields made he of beaten gold. 300 shekels of gold went to 1 shield. And the king put them in the house of the forest of Lebanon. Moreover, the king made a great throne of ivory and overlaid it with pure gold. You can imagine what that throne looked like. And there were 6 steps to the throne, and with a footstool of gold. So here, if we pull up just a quick depiction, right? King Solomon's throne. This is once again just a depiction out of somebody's mind. But you can see you have the steps going up, right? There's a throne over there. And as it says here, which were fastened to the throne. So you had the steps, right, going up to the throne, and stays on each side of the sitting, the armrests of the throne, and 2 lions standing by the stays. So you had 2 lions on the left hand and the right hand of the actual throne. And 12 lions stood there on the one side and on the other upon the 6 steps. So for each step, you had a lion on one side, a lion on the other, a lion on one side, and a lion on the other, a lion on one side, a lion on the other. Here they're just showing different animals, but according to the description, it was lions. What we had? Yeah, there was not the like made in any kingdom. And all the drinking vessels of King Solomon were of gold, and all the vessels of the house of the forest of Lebanon were of pure gold, and that was a palace. None were of silver. It was not anything accounted of in the days of Solomon, meaning the value of silver dropped because they were so rich that gold was like the standard, basic. So silver wasn't even something people even looked at like that. For the king's ships went to Tarshish with the servants of Hiram. Every 3 years once came the ships of Tarshish bringing gold and silver, ivory, and apes and peacocks. Now, in this verse here, it's not saying that they got the gold, silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks from Tarshish, right? The ships of Tarshish is like in one saying, ships of Tarshish, which when you read in here, because this same verse, you cross-reference it, is pretty much the same thing in 1 Kings, the 10th chapter. But when you read what the definition here of Tarshish, let's go to dictionaries, and I think we should be good with Easton's. So here there's a couple of, like there's this definition here. The one of interest here in particular is here, right? So it says here, it appears that this name, which I believe Tarshish is Spain, okay, and they also mentioned that, where is it, somewhere in here? Where they mentioned either Cyprus or Spain. But it says here, it appears that this name is also used without reference to any locality, right? So one use of ships of Tarshish, right, as you can see here in double quotes, is an expression, sometimes denoting simply ships intended for a long voyage. And one example being Isaiah 23:1, the burden of Tyre, howl ye ships of Tarshish, for it is laid waste, so that there is no house, no entering in. From the land of Kittim it is revealed to them. Ships of a large size, right, seagoing ships, whatever might be the port to which they sailed. Solomon's ships were so styled, and that's why it mentions them as the ships of Tarshish. And I think there's another precept. It might be, what is it? Yeah, was it this one? No. It was, yeah, here we go. As you can see in 1 Kings 22:48, Jehoshaphat made ships of Tarshish to go to Ophir for gold, but they went not, for the ships were broken at Ezion Geber. So that Ophir being the Americas, the ships of Tarshish, in one sense, meaning these were like a phrase used to represent like ships that were well built to weather the storm, so to speak, to have those long voyages. Because when you look here, let's say ancient Near East map, all right, this might, no, this is not enough. Let's see, ancient Mediterranean. Here we go. Nice. Yeah, so one time I put a zoom in. Okay. I believe Tarshish was somewhere around here, right? So even looking at the distance here, sailing from whether it's Joppa or wherever you're sailing from in Israel to Tarshish is not going to take a year and a half, all right, to get here and back. What will take a year and a half, which is similar to what was mentioned or what we read of in 2 Esdras 13, is a trip to the Americas. Okay, so that's what it means here in 1 Second Chronicles chapter 9, the ships of Tarshish here are, in one sense, like ships built for long journeys, or it could be here that Tarshish was like a base for Hiram servants or the Phoenicians, where they actually built those ships. Okay. So anyway, as it says, they were able to get those exotic things, right? They got gold, they got silver, they got ivory, apes, peacocks. And King Solomon passed all the kings of the earth in riches and wisdom, and all the kings of the earth sought the presence of Solomon to hear his wisdom that God had put in his heart. So he was very known. Okay, he was famous. And they brought every man his present, vessels of silver and vessels of gold, and raiment, harness and spices, horses and mules, a rate year by year. So you could say Israel was balling at this time. And Solomon had 4,000 stalls for horses and chariots, and 12,000 horsemen, whom he bestowed in the chariot cities with the king at Jerusalem. And he reigned over all the kings from the river, which is the Euphrates, even unto the land of the Philistines, and to the border of Egypt. So if we look up here, let's zoom out of here. King Solomon's kingdom. Let's see. So a lot of these don't expand that high. Maybe this is, yeah, maybe this one is pretty decent, but you can see it goes all the way up to the Euphrates and then comes all the way down here. You know, and once again, these are just approximations based on the information we have today. Verse 27, and the king made silver in Jerusalem as stones, and cedar trees made he as the sycamore trees that are in the low plains in abundance. Meaning there was so much of it that silver was likened on to seeing like a stone. It wasn't a big deal like it would be in different times. And likewise, cedar trees, which are much more expensive and more valuable, were treated as common as sycamore trees, which you could easily find in the low plains. And they brought unto Solomon horses out of Egypt and out of all lands. Now the rest of the acts of Solomon, first and last, are they not written in the book of Nathan the prophet, and in the prophecy of Ahijah the Shilonite, and in the visions of Iddo the seer against Jeroboam the son of Nebat? And Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel 40 years. And Solomon slept with his fathers, and he was buried in the city of David his father. And Rehoboam his son reigned in his stead. And that brings us to the end of 2 Chronicles, the 9th chapter. Lord willing, this is edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Recha, Kodesh. Until next time, Shalom.